wall and you met Cynthia just then, Flora, and I'd love to hear some questions from you. So scribble them down. So obviously B-I-Z in the centre. Batman Forever was the highest grossing movie. Wasn't that brilliant? Not. O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. The internet first entered public consciousness. Isn't that amazing? It's only 20 years. The DVD was introduced. Clearly I did it by talking about where we were 20 years ago. And the first question I think today is how we've changed how business.
Military are also open to women now, so went from 8 to 18%. We've seen the National Paid Parental Leave Scheme. That has been a real positive because for the first time we've seen work.
Do you think it is easier for women to do it now and to be in charge of what they want to do, their own business?
A little while ago, and unfortunately I couldn't find one about Australia, but
is because of their total situation, so that if have to do it exactly their way. And
I think that corporate
and brownie points.
Yeah.
But I thought, who cares? Whatever their motivation is, as long as it is happening and they're acknowledging that changes need to.
It's like 25 years later, I still have no witchy comeback.
Talking maybe large businesses. But across organisations, we don't see it so much. It's not like people say, well, you can't have that job because you're a woman or whatever. What we're seeing now is gender asbestos. It's built into the walls, the floors, the ceiling.
It's just a different approach to the problem. So if we get more whole population who's taking responsibility for caring, and the more...
But we don't, and we still have a way to go in that. I mean, every year you look at your still more to fix it, so exposure is an excellent policy.
Louise?
Actually, I really want to ask Elizabeth a question, if I can, which is about gender asbestos. So
that's the best term.
It's such a great term. So one of the situations that I think probably we've all been in is a situation where you think at the same time we don't want to do it so that it too much reflects on us individually as being weak or not being prepared to stand up for it.
You're absolutely right, and that's about stepping outside your gender boundary. So when we have a view about how women should be, not just in society but also in the workplace, and if you step up and say, you know what happened then was just not okay, you're really taking a more aggressive stance. And actually when we step up beside each other and create...
I find myself, I have at Shoe maternity policy for our very first 2 Shoes of Prey babies were being formed. It was built by men for men, and that's nobody's fault, it's simply how it was. And there's so much that's just so unnatural I still can't answer, which is once we reach this parity of roles in the workplace.
It's an interesting question, but I think that I agree with you completely. This is a societal, I should say.
Because that's a trouble for men and women to make true choice in the normal in Australia, then who are a good mother, and we know it's much more nuanced than that. So these are the social norms that have to change to allow that true choice.
But this is where I go to the point of role models.
Do you think it's changing? I hope that we're raising young men who recognise the importance of the roles and as opposed to God bless her, but my beautiful Italian mother-in-law who has a very differently Louise,
my sons are grown up, they're 21 and 24. We want to be good girls, we want to do the right job, and so we tend to often range of things I think is less common in women because we're happy to just put it out there, 3 out of 10's fine, I got 3 things really good, whereas we're not prepared to do that.
But how do we make that balance? Because I can't do what I do without the support of my husband. He helps me run the house, I help him run the house. He's got his skills, he's so much tidier and a way better cook than I am, but I take the kids for vaccinations and, blah, blah, and all the jobs I've got to do. How do we find that balance without ever, making one gender, one role, one more important than the other? How do we make sure we bring what we all as unique individuals, male and female, to the party?
I actually think it's about more and more tightly held. So we need to impact at that point, and that's why I think the expression of our humanity, caring. So it's not about devaluing motherhood or being a parent or anything at all. It's actually about saying that
women than men who want those big roles.
No, absolutely not. No, and sorry, absolutely, or whether they care.
I like the idea that it comes into not just the way society. It's very interesting to see that it isn't a really healthy, supportive, that might be part-time, full-time, one or the other, both, whatever, awesome, good on you, as opposed to us saying. So there's never been this point where I've said, I'm working mums. They go, wonder what we'll do with our lives. It's not this gender role, which I agree with you. I think it's really strong and we need to break it. I don't know how to, but it's worth a try.
I think there was something really interesting that we're all sort of talking about in the value of care. Something that I think about quite frequently is shoes of prey and the way that we do business and the way that we bring these to do something like that. And that has that in caring, because it does have also this really high professional business value.
And that comes back to, I think, to the mix. I think it's so essential for so many companies, and we look at things differently. Men and women approach tasks differently and problems differently and all of those factors. And can I ask about too, women and mentoring and competitiveness? Because I wonder how many industries where there is true female mentoring without that fear that if you help someone, they're after your job. Louise,
I've never even thought of that.
Fantastic.
I don't.
But there's sort of this perception that women don't necessarily support one another. They're the first to cut each other down.
No, that is a different thing. I do get what you're saying there.
When I was in investment banking and I was involved in setting up a women's network globally, the only time in my career I've ever experienced that.
Sort of, I guess, the mentoring. I'm amazed how many young girls now ask, which I think is wonderful. And I, in my field, I think it's a really important thing. And I try to help young women as much as possible, and even get emails from girls I don't know who are either studying journalism or want to years. And every time they get a new achievement or they do something, they let me know. I feel like I've become another
leadership, and that comes to your point. So, but what's happening at the moment is this way we think about leadership is going away from the individual. It's not, but you can actually impact other people. So we're not caring into the front, which is great.
Kind of a big question. I probably should have given you some time to think about it. But if you could all, each one of you, wave a magic wand and make one significant change so that in 20 years from now, when we're all sitting here with good lighting, we can say what's happened, how it's moved on. What do you think, Cynthia? Is there something that you see?
Yeah, I feel really passionate about the childcare debate. Like, arranging childcare is no longer an option. So we're miles away from that at the moment.
Elizabeth?
I think my dream would be to impact on the social.
I would change the natural bias that falls into place when we don't have. I think that I was reading up more on this.
What I'd change is the work-life balance, the way that we structure work debate completely.
Love this magic wand business, Louise.
I think I'd change girls' education. They leave school, and as they enter university and as they leave university.
I lived with my dad, and my dad used to say to me, there's two things you can't do. One of them is go to the toilet standing up, and probably don't get a job where you require strength because you've got chicken arms. But he said you can improve that if you powering thing. It wasn't until years later. Really interesting where the messages come from. Men, women,
No stereotypes about what men and women can and can't do. I think that would be incredibly liberating, looking at these issues, because the Abe government is leave the workforce when they get married. Reasons Japan's very determined to lift women's workforce participation is they also think that will lift the fertility rate as well. So,
before I open it to the floor for questions, is there anything else that you ladies want to add? Any other point that we want to make?
can I just add one other point? Yep. And it hasn't really come up in the discussion, but I do think the issue of violence against women. And she said to me, she said, look, Liz, if my uncle does it, we need the will to want to change this picture.
I'd like to say something that's a bit trite after that, but it's just to say that I'm really pleased to have this discussion not be focusing on maternity. 9 months is such a small issue compared to the 20 years that follow. It's kind of, to me, it's like focus. I feel it should be the longer term focus of how you actually manage for the full time, as opposed to just that short time.
Well, actually, I just want to make one comment that sort of brings the discussion back to the awards a bit, because one of the things we haven't really talked about is, which is where we've tended to spend a lot of our time today.
Okay, fantastic. Who's got some questions? Yeah, sure. I'll start down here. First arm up.
Sure.
And I'll come to you next.
Hello, thank you so much for the discussion. Sorry, Louise, to bring it a little bit back to...
Sorry, can you just tell us who you are?
My name is Angela Priestley from Women's Agenda. Experience. I have just returned from maternity leave, and I can honestly say that it's the first time in my life that I feel like my career could be derailed now. It's the first time that I thought, this is really hard. You feel like you go from thriving in your career to you were surviving every day. So I wanted to ask what you think organisations, particularly larger organisations like the ones that you work for, and Jodie, would be interesting to hear about Shoes of Prey as well, could do for new mothers, particularly around breastfeeding and coping with the lack of sleep and really needing some added flexibility and a bit of extra care during that time.
Can I just clarify one thing? That I'm not in any way saying that maternity leave isn't important. Maternity leave and
they return to work and try and negotiate a flexible work arrangement. That's in 2014, 1 in 2, and All Roles Flex Initiative. They've changed.
And that is, I think it's also incumbent upon employers to not deal with the 6 months or 12 months, or in some, for some women who've taken a big career break where they've been out of the workforce for years.
We just did an appreciative inquiry, and admittedly it's only one organisation, but what we found is leave, keep in touch with her, but equally mentor her. That
it's incumbent upon employers not to presuppose what
headed to the Europe with 3 young kids aged 0, 2 and 4.
It will get better. This too shall pass.
Just from the perspective of a small business and starting our own, having that opportunity to bring to it, and secondly, doesn't work in your experiences of workplaces.
The baby or on maternity leave, don't forget your voice. Have the conversation with the boss and ask and say, I can see this working for me or this not working for me. And you do lose your confidence and your mojo and you feel like you're in this fog for a period of time. Yeah, but you come out of it. And I think it's really important to make sure the conversation goes both ways, that you don't suddenly sit back and just take whatever they're going to let you take.
For sure, but I think too that just in some of my personal experiences, I don't know that it's okay.
Question up here.
My name is Martine Hart from a website called Engaging Women, and I love the idea of peers within your industries who are...
I've certainly seen it.
Yep.
So I've certainly seen it both with colleagues that I've worked with, but also generally, when I was in investment banking, one of my clients who was a CFO of a top 50 company in Australia, he had shared caring responsibilities for his twin daughters, and so he only worked half day on Wednesday, and on Wednesday he'd go and pick the girls up, and everybody just knew that that's people to work from home, and there's an equal proportion of men and women who visibly work from home.
Gives me an idea for an interview series. Maybe we should be interviewing these men and, having...
few women where they're calling out for good female talent, and I think it's about men work.
Any more views? Okay, another question, yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jane Tasker from the Australian newspaper. A big debate in corporate Australia is on quotas on boards. So I'm just interested to see the view of some of the panel on whether they think we need quotas.
I'm happy to kick it off. You're right, if you look at the top ASX 200, 42 boards of the top ASX 200 still have no women in 2014. So yes, we've seen a significant increase, but it's still not really.
Anyone else want to go into that one?
Yes, well, I find the debate about boards quite annoying because I actually think that it's a bit like the...
I would vote for. I think you'd get a better outcome if we had exposed common metrics.
I agree that I often say that which is not measured is not monitored, and so the fact that we don't have...
Well, I've seen a highly technical clipboard held up with the words bye-bye written on it, so that's my cue. Who said technology hasn't moved forward? Thank you all very much for giving us your time this morning and coming along and participating in, I think, what has been a fascinating... Brighton Hall and Cynthia Whelan. Thank you. Thanks, ladies. And I know I don't have to do this, but I also want to thank Telstra because I think we don't celebrate what we do well enough. I think we're always so quick to let everybody else, do that. I think it's really important that we stand up and acknowledge what we do really well in this country, and I'm really proud of the women. I think they're amazing. Feel free to do so, but thank you very much for coming along today. Thanks. Thanks, guys.